Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me on episode 7 of Coach Talks with Shreyas. And this week, I have a very interesting topic to share with you all, and is focused on the student community in particular. So, I have a very great guest that I met on Twitter who has been an amazing friend and has built her own community of amazing people, and is also the CEO of Tenderfoot, which is an internship related startup where students are connected with prospective companies looking for internship. So without further ado, let me welcome today's guest, Aprilynne Alter. Hey, Aprilynne, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
And I've already seen some great folks joining in from LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Twitch is just for a little bit of showing around. Just I just happen to browse the channel, so there might not be much activity going on. So, Vanchita, thank you for joining us. Hey, Joe, good to see you. Thanks for joining us live. So, Evelyn, who are you and what is your startup about? So, let me just get a brief introduction from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Aprilynne. As Shreyas mentioned, I'm the CEO of Tenderfoot, which is a startup that connects students with internships at startups. There's I guess this whole it's interesting to define who you are by what you do. It's like, yes, Tenderfoot is like a very large part of my life right now, but there's just been so much kind of going on behind the scenes with audience building and Twitter and YouTube and kind of building this community behind my own personal brand and behind Tenderfoot. And so there's like lots to talk about there. But yeah, that's just a little bit more about me.
Definitely, I think that is something which really caught my attention because if I remember right, you started on Twitter probably just close to end of 2020, and in the last 1 year, the way you've grown, and I've also had a call related to Tenderfoot, so I remember how passionate you are about helping students. So, how did that journey come about? What inspired you to start looking at options to help students get the right internships that they deserve?
Absolutely. So I guess I'll just start with I graduated from college a semester early, and that was back in December. And I had a full time job at Citigroup, so a large global financial institution, lined up to start in July. And so that the original plan during that time was to maybe travel, but obviously with the global pandemic, that wasn't really an option. So as you do, I decided to start a company instead during that time. I actually started a different one first. So in December, which is when I first started my Twitter account, didn't really work out for a number of reasons, and I didn't really know what I was doing with Twitter. So I had maybe a little over 100 followers, or less than 100 followers in March. And March is when I kind of abandoned that first startup and started Tenderfoot. And it's interesting because after I abandoned that first one, I was left with maybe like 2 days of thinking, gosh, what am I doing now? And I still had a couple of months before my full-time job started. But I think that I, like many other people, am someone who just can't just stay still. If I'm not working on something, then I just feel very restless. And so within 2 days of abandoning that one, I started thinking, I want to be working on another project right now. What can I do? And in terms of like the ideation for what the concept of the startup would be, I really just started by just making a list of everything that I believe that I was like, I had some sort of unique insight on, or were uniquely good at or familiar with. And personally, I had just graduated from college, so I thought, okay, students, especially college students, I feel like I am uniquely qualified and know a little bit more about students than the average person. And then I did intern at a startup while I was in college, and I was with them for maybe 2 years total, both in person and remotely during my school time. And I had like a very special place in my heart for the startup world. And so I decided, I always recommend to students that they intern at startups if they can while they're still in college. But the question that everyone always asks me is, I get them all on board. They're like, yeah, I want to join a startup. Then they ask, where can I find an internship at a startup? I never really had a good question for that because there weren't a lot of great options. So I decided to make one, and hence Tenderfoot was born.
That's really amazing, like the motivation that you felt. And yes, you were a student yourself, so you would have gone through the host of problems that others have gone through as well. So, what was that one pain point which you felt was, that was it? So, you just wanted to go ahead and create an ecosystem which favors students and preferably connects them with prospective employers and consider all the different aspects which we will be talking in a short while. So, what was that one pain point which set the bar for you to create it?
I guess the biggest one was that it was just impossible to find these internships at startups. So either finding internships in general at startups, and two, finding quality startups to work for, right? And that kind of went to the question of what is a startup, right? Is two guys who have an idea in their garage, is that a startup? And will that be an enriching internship experience for someone? Because your summers are valuable. You only have 3 summers during your entire college career. And so you want to make sure that each one of those internships is very enriching and empowering experience for you. One that you can put on your resume, one that you can definitely grow from and become better placed to get a better full-time job post-graduation. So I think those two aspects were just really difficult. A lot of the solutions out there for internships are really geared towards larger institutions like City, like what I eventually ended up taking a job at. But not really a lot of startups could either afford to be on the bigger platforms or afford to be placed highly on those platforms.
So, yes, the definition of startup is something which really needs to be defined clearly. And the next big point is, of course, the funding that the startups receive and their ability to pay it forward to the interns as well. So I think that is one of the key points which we will be touching upon before we proceed towards talking about the pain points. So, what was one thing that you did perhaps during your summer internships that you find is very easily it can be replicated by anybody irrespective of where they're studying and what course they're in? So what would that one thing in your opinion would be for students to try out?
I will say that what I actually did and what I think people should do are two different things. I'll admit, I got lucky. I got very lucky in finding my internship, the internship at the startup that completely changed my life. I just happened to go to a career fair, the only career fair that I've ever been in. The startup just happened to be at that one career fair, the only career fair that that startup actually went to, and all of the stars just happened to align. But obviously, luck cannot be replicated, and so instead, what I really encourage students to do, and it kind of is related to luck, right? Is increasing your surface area for luck in terms of putting yourself out there, putting as much of your work and your personality and what you're looking for out there so that, luck can happen and that the right person can see your profile or your work at the right time to lead to a match. And as much as kind of like wishy-washy luck sounds, I have found that there are results in terms of matches that happen relatively consistently as long as you consistently put yourself out there via building your audience, which I think is what we're going to be talking about today.
Definitely, because you bring a great point related to career fairs and the opportunities that the college might be able to present. Because at least in India, when I did my bachelor's, the kind of atmosphere that was created was that placements were expected to be done through the college. So rather, the college would, give out some opportunities and invite companies through which you would get your first job. And also with related to like internships in particular, there was no what do you say, there was nothing that was a compulsion, where internships was something, it was a luxury rather than something that needed to be done to improve either your skill sets, your knowledge, get hands-on experience. Because trust me, like as much as college can, help you with your studies, hands-on experiences only had when you enter the industry, because that situation is totally different from when you're studying. So it's totally different depending on the region where you're studying. But I'm really glad that there is some motivation right now during the present situation as well to do virtual internships. But I'm not sure how well they're successful. So what is your take on that, especially after the pandemic set in and students were forced to take up alternative courses like virtual learning and probably a virtual internship as well?
Yeah, so I'll say I was able to have a virtual internship, and that was at Citi and the bank. And I so I'll compare two internships that I held. One was at the startup based in Silicon Valley in person, and then the other one was virtual for a global financial institution. And maybe I'm just biased for working for startups as opposed to, huge financial conglomerates. But I can say that I learned more in my in person startup internship than I did in all 4 years of college. It's exactly what you were saying in terms of, sure, I can have as much textbook knowledge as I can via my classes, but in terms of what actually developed me as a person and my leadership abilities and my own confidence in myself and what I was capable of and my skills, that all came from working, having industry knowledge, and especially at a startup, because at least I was thrust into positions I was no way qualified for, like at all. But I had to be taking up these responsibilities and these roles because I was there. And when you're working in such a small team, you have to rise to that occasion. And so, plus it was in person and I was working a ton versus in my virtual internship. One, I think I was less interested in it in general because I was comparing it with my internship at the startup and it just didn't really compare with me. I didn't really have any passion or fire there. Two, because it was virtual, I didn't get a lot of hands-on time with my manager. And so it was a lot more tricky to extend myself beyond the scope of my work. It was pretty easy to get my own work done, but via at the startup in person, it was really easy to like go beyond that and to ask for more responsibilities or just to do more things or to walk over to someone's desk and ask what they're doing and kind of learn more in like the different areas of the company versus virtually. It's not like you can speak to others at the water cooler or pass by other people's desks. You have to be very intentional. I still do think that it's possible to get like a very enriching, empowering virtual internship experience, but you do have to be very intentional in those virtual experiences to reach out to your manager, to reach out to your co-interns, to reach out to other people within the company. And that's really on you because no one else will do it for you.
You make some great points over there. So, what I infer from what you said is that virtual internships can serve well as a stopgap arrangement. While you're doing your studies, it might help complement a few things. And yes, setting the right intentions as a coach, I can probably 100% endorse that it is one of the most important factors. Either you do it virtually or in person, setting the right intentions, having an action plan, and finally implementing them. I think that is what really helps you make progress. And the biggest impediment in a virtual setup is the ability to reach out to your manager or a mentor, as you rightly said, which is kind of dependent on adjusting the mutual times, because right now you're in a different setup and you have to coordinate a lot of things. Scheduling a meeting, it might just get unnoticed because the priority is not the intern, probably. So, yes, there are many other issues or pain points associated with it, but again, in the end, it just serves as a good stopgap arrangement for you to spend your time a little bit more qualitatively and get something in return which probably might help you in the future once things get back to normal as it is happening right now. So, yeah, those are great points. Just a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, please do drop it in the chat, and we will be able to pick it live. So, April, after I probably promoted it late last night, I've got about 28 to 29 different questions from students, from people who have just graduated, and since we have very limited time, what I've done is I've just categorized that into 8 different pain points. So I'll be just presenting the problems one after the other, and the 8 common problems probably covers all these 27 to 28 questions. So if you're ready, we'll just go ahead and start picking up the first pain point.
Perfect.
Okay, so majority of the people were either concerned about their work not getting noticed or have experienced this particular problem in their respective internships where they are doing a really good job but still they find in a position where they're hardly appreciated or they find there is a lack of motivation. So how do you think a student or an intern can address this particular issue?
Okay, well, I'll say two things. One, if if the work that you're talking about being unnoticed is ones that you are personally doing, like you're building a portfolio in order to make yourself a better candidate for internships, definitely build in public, share in public. And that's something that I'm going to be an advocate for probably forever. It's very important to put yourself out there in whatever ways you feel comfortable, right? Some people are happy going on video and being on YouTube. Other people are very camera shy, right? There's Twitter, which you feel like if you're more, that type of community, there's a great indie hacking and like entrepreneurship and student community on Twitter, which I would highly recommend that you can put your work on. You could start a blog, you could start a personal website, you could do all of these things. But when you are building, if you're just building on a blog or if you're putting yourself out there on a personal website, make sure you do also put that work in a more social place, like a social media platform to get more eyes on what you're doing, which is why I love building in public on Twitter, because there's like a huge community of people who can support you. And again, the more consistently you post, the more consistently you put yourself out there, your work out there, the greater your surface area for luck, the greater the chance that your work does get noticed. So that's in terms of personal work being done just yourself outside of the internship. With the internship itself, it's it's tricky if you're being given work that goes unnoticed. I would say that usually if this is the case, it's probably because either it's exactly what your manager is expecting for you. So if they tell you, paint this block red and you paint that block red, you're probably not going to get noticed very often because it's like exactly what the minimum requirements are. And the other thing is if you do go above and beyond those requirements but don't communicate that to your superiors, then that work is also going to go unnoticed. So what I would recommend is like if you think about doing extra work or work kind of above and beyond your capabilities, look above and beyond what your manager has told you to do, I would recommend in your meetings with your manager or in the Slack channel or whatever you're using to communicate, indicate that like you understand what was given to you, but then also use that as an opportunity to show your curiosity, and your desire to do more, and say that you have this idea and you have this idea and you have this other idea, and also explain like the potential impacts for those ideas and share those with your manager. And then one, you can get their opinion on it. Two, it puts it on their platform, like on the within their realm of being noticed, I suppose.
Mhm.
And so when you actually do that extra work, they kind of are somewhat prepared for it, but because they haven't directly given it to you, there is no direct guidelines for that, then they'll be pleasantly surprised with the quality of work that you put out, as opposed to just like, yeah, that's what I was expecting. And so from that, you're able to kind of put yourself more on the board and show that you're consistently able to go above and beyond, and have great ideas, and eventually become someone who is relatively indispensable, especially if they bring up a new intern or have had previous interns and can directly compare your work to ones of previous interns and see, like, yeah, she's doing so much more than the other ones did.
I think these are some great solutions, especially communication, because we often notice the lack of communication being one of the primary reasons because we do not know the exact nature of the problem here. So we can only suggest and speculate. So communicating well, I think, which is it is a very key soft skill that anybody should learn nowadays because it's a virtual setup. So there is every chance for you to, misunderstand something or might not be able to portray a particular thing as clear as possible or probably as you'd like. So that's a great suggestion. And building in public, I think that is one more way to tackle the initial fears of you being a student and trying to build your social media profiles. Because I've often been asked by students saying that they do not have anything to showcase. So how can people come and connect with them? So I mean, your example is a very great one. Like you started showcasing your work and starting to put out threads. Probably on Twitter works well. On LinkedIn, you can start putting out a good slide deck because that is something which works well. You can run polls, you can run videos. So I think having something to show and starting to just build upon it in the public, I think that is one great way to tackle your fears of being unnoticed and at the same time have a good social proof, like where I guess nowadays managers are probably present on social media, so there is every chance that they would be looking out different candidates, especially if you're an intern. So I think these two suggestions should really help, tackle you or your work going unnoticed. So thank you for the solution, Aprilynne. So this is something which I think we would have all faced, at least in one way or the other. So your mentors being uncooperative or they not being reachable when you want them to be. So yeah, it can be one of the greatest internship challenges that students can face. So how would we tackle this thing?
Yeah, also, I've definitely had my fair share of uncooperative manager situations before. I will say first, like, if it's something like a formal mentorship program, like with City in our internship, we did have a formal internship, a formal mentorship program where each intern was paired with a mentor. And I if your formal mentor is not being cooperative, then would definitely recommend reaching out to whoever organized that mentorship program and ask for a new one. That should be the case if you're being ghosted or something like that. If it's more the case of it's like a direct manager of yours and you can't switch. So I'll give a little personal anecdote. So in the startup that I worked with, the first like couple weeks of my internship, I worked directly underneath a manager. After that, she ended up leaving the company, so I was left all alone. But during that point, we didn't get along very well. She was kind of the opposite problem. She was a pretty controlling mentor figure in which I felt like I didn't have a lot of freedom to be able to do the work that I wanted to do or that I felt like I should do, and then I was being pushed by her constantly to do things that I didn't really want to do. And like it got to the point where I was close to just quitting the job because of how stifled I felt by her. And what I eventually did, I asked if I could grab a coffee with her. We walked over to a coffee shop. I had like written down in a journal a bunch of different points that I wanted to basically confront her about because I felt like I couldn't be my best self. I couldn't work my best work in that condition, and something needed to change. It was not a sustainable position. So I came prepared with like a list of things I wanted to talk to her about. And like one by one, I just like I went through them and I told her I just basically I communicated with her everything that I was really struggling with, everything that I felt like was unfair. And we talked through every single point. And so by the end of it, things were pretty much resolved. And it was honestly one of the scariest things that I had done up until that point, because no one wants to confront like a superior. No one wants to confront someone who's there. I'm like, who am I to tell this woman what she should or shouldn't do? I'm some like student. I don't know what I'm talking about. All I was able to know was how I felt. And I guess be confident that your feelings are valid. If you're feeling stifled, if you're feeling neglected, either one of those two, you're valid in feeling that way. You have to be confident that it's okay to feel how you do. Like, it's just because you're a student doesn't mean that you have to go through work abuse. And just understand that when you bring it up, it's okay for you to be doing so. And if you feel like you can't, then go to that manager's superior, right? There's always someone to talk to, even if your direct manager or your direct mentor isn't being very cooperative.
Yeah, so can we just say that, again, communication as a key skill is one of the probably the basic things you can do to, share your thoughts, share your feelings with your mentor, and just get yourself, known to the mentor so that they get to see what the mistakes is. Because usually, what happens in a work setup is sometimes pressure. Sometimes it's the commitments, sometimes it's the deadline. So just being a little understanding and also taking that courage to go and approach your mentor in a polite way where you share your thoughts, I think that will really help build a good rapport with your mentor. And again, like if we go back to the topic on hand, building a community, I think this is where you might be able to reach out to your community and ask for suggestions as to how you can really approach a mentor who is unresponsive. Or if you know a particular issue on hand, you can always reach out to the audience for suggestions. Preferably, you can just find a coach or another mentor and go through with them, practice with them, and get their opinion before you even reach out. So, again, the advantages of building a community, building in public, and learning to communicate effectively will probably save you from this particular predicament. What do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that all works. I will say too that when you do communicate with your manager, if you choose to confront them about what you're feeling, I would recommend being much more like impact based in that conversation, as opposed to just like not just like, I feel overlooked by you or I feel neglected by you. Like, yes, say that, but then also say the impact. Like, as a result, I feel like I'm not able to get my work checked, which could lead to poor work over time. As a result, I feel like I'm not able to grow as much because I don't have that constant feedback, and I need feedback in order to learn and grow as I go through this internship, right? Be very clear in the impact of how you're feeling or what they are or they are not doing with you. And that could help them feel a little bit more receptive to changing their behaviors.
I absolutely agree. So, the next topic on hand is issues with time management. I'm sure whenever we have started out, this was one particular thing we have almost struggled with. Some have, conquered it well. Some are still conquering. Some are still yet to take that action step. So, a balance between work, academics, and personal life can be quite challenging when, especially if you're, applying for your very first internship or you're just entering the professional setup. So, what, in your opinion, or what did you do to tackle your time management, especially with your college life, the internship, and also your personal activities?
Yeah, I'll say when I was first a freshman in college, I thought, because this was the advice recommended to me by people, I thought like I have to join a lot of clubs, I have to get super involved in campus activity, I have to do all of these things. And so kind of like by the like third trimester, my freshman year, I was feeling pretty burnt out because I was doing a lot of different things, but not just that. I realized that I wasn't able to kind of be my best self in all of the things that I was doing because I was in all of these clubs, I went to all of these meetings, but I didn't really have enough time to do any one of them to the degree that I would have wanted to. And so by that point, I realized, I am doing too much. And at that point, I made some pretty tough cuts in terms of my life. Like I cut things out. I was like, I went through everything with like under like serious scrutiny and cut out pretty much most of what I was doing. And I left schoolwork, obviously, because I needed to be doing that. And I left like uh, I played a sport in college, so I did the sport as well, and I chose one club to stay in and to give my all in. And I do believe that being like pretty ruthless with what you prioritize and what you cut out of your life is really important, especially when you're a student. You feel like you're doing a lot of things because it is better to do something, I guess, correctly and in a way that you can grow from, as opposed to just doing a zillion things, not really growing much from any of them. I would recommend trying out lots of new things, but being very generous in how early you decide to quit. Like become the best quitter that you know in terms of like other things that you do, because that's like a really great way to like filter what actually works for your life and what doesn't. And so, tip one, just like filter, filter, filter. Don't be afraid to cut things out or try something new and then quit. So, that kind of helped me a lot. And then once I had kind of gotten a base idea of like what I can and cannot do, as I grew, I was able to add more things from that. I will say though, time management is I feel like something that you kind of struggle with always unless you're very good at it. Even now, I'm doing a zillion things. I definitely still don't have a lot of time on my plate. Like I just have a lot of things going on. So I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to time management, but I will say when I was a student, definitely like cutting things out was very important and being able to grow from the things that I left behind.
Yeah, I probably can resonate with what you've gone through because there were two biggest mistakes that I probably committed. One was to compartmentalize my life as 888. So 8 hours for my college life, 8 hours for sleep, and 8 hours for personal activities. But what I didn't realize was like there were times where my college work would probably increase. So I had to kind of, cut down on either my personal life activities or, cut down on sleep and put that into the college life. And sometimes my college would be totally free. So my time would be better spent on probably recuperating or, giving it out for self-care. So that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I did. It's never 888 each day because each day is unique, each day is new, so you can't really pinpoint. Yes, you can do it probably as close as possible. It's never perfect. And the second thing, which I think even you stressed out, was the lack of prioritizing, right? So we tend to have that initial energy, the initial boost where we want to make a name for each and everything. So we enroll in a lot of clubs. We want to be known in the um, local area or in the college area. So you just kind of go and play each and every sport. You go and play each and every other cultural activity. You do that. You do this, and in the end, prioritizing just goes out of the park. So I think these two things would be my tips. So one is to prioritize what is important for that particular day, and it changes. So be flexible to implement that changes as and when the need arises. And second is to understand that balance is definitely not the 888 or 50-50 that most people think it is to be, especially as a student. Rather, it is that flexible amount of investing in your college, your personal life, and at the same time leaving enough time for your sleep. So that is something that I would definitely offer. And yes, outsource can be a good thing if you have to resources for the funds, and you can probably employ someone else. Otherwise, outsourcing as a student or as an intern might still be difficult, considering that the average wage that you demand might not be even met. So outsourcing as a student, a little bit tough, manageable, but I would say it's still tough. Okay, so this was something almost I saw in about 30% of the questions, where the interns are given trivial work like getting a photocopy, or filling out some forms or managing Excel sheets, rather than doing the actual work that they were supposed to be doing, or assisting their seniors and mentors. So, is there any solution to these kind of things?
Yeah, I'll say first, try to not get yourself into those positions by, and like I'm sure it works differently by country, but at least like if you are applying for different internships, after you have an interview, make sure to speak to your manager, understand exactly what your roles and responsibilities are, and it's okay to ask for potential contact information of people who've interned at that company before. And so you can reach out to past interns at that company and kind of like see what that internship experience was like. Also like LinkedIn is great for this too. If you look up that company on LinkedIn, you can like see who has worked there before and look for other interns who have worked there. Interview them, just like buy them a coffee, ask them what their experience was like. And that can give you a better idea of what you're getting yourself into at the beginning. So if they say, yeah, this is crap, I just made photocopies and got coffee all the time, then maybe consider not taking that internship. But let's say you did take an internship and you were expecting great things, and now you're being asked to photocopy a bunch of stuff. Well, first, I would, as I guess like a common theme here, make sure to like communicate with your manager. Say like, hey, I really want to be able to do this or do that. Let them know what you want to do, or kind of bring up your concerns that maybe your work isn't enough. If they aren't super receptive to that, then at the very least, what you could do is start to shadow. Like if they're not physically giving you work, then you can start kind of giving yourself work by shadowing other people in that company. And through that, being able to gain more knowledge about what's going on, and then maybe being able to have ideas or other things, or being able to like volunteer yourself in a meeting if something comes up and they need someone to take care of something. And so I guess like one, don't get yourself into that position in the first place. If you can help it, reach out to past interns. Two, communicate with your managers, see if they can give you more work. And three, if they're not giving you work, try to give yourself work by being really proactive and showing up to meetings and asking lots of questions and shadowing other people.
Yeah, definitely. So the bottom line is do due diligence. Probably you would have done that for your college as well. So do the same to vet the company and understand the type of internship that is offered. And I think the audience will probably appreciate this recurring theme of building a good community, having that support, external to the organization, and once again, like communicate, because that is something which is very trivial, very basic, and yeah, probably doing the due diligence is one of the most apt solution to tackle trivial work. This is probably going to be very, very controversial. So there is always this discussion going, with regards to free versus paid internship. And even if it is paid, the hours are not compensated suitably. So your take on that?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. And I know that it depends a lot on country and on industry. Because at least in my college, most of my and my peers' internships were definitely paid because we were in the business school. That being said, like I had a lot of like pre-med uh friends, right? Or like there was one training to be a vet, and like and or like lab work, and a lot of their internships over the summer were unpaid. And it was like a divide by industry. And so like if your industry, I guess, is one that the the standard is unpaid internships, then can't really do much about that. You're, with kind of the rest of the people. That being said, if you have the option, so like if you're in an industry that can have paid or unpaid internships, I personally am pretty against unpaid work. The a couple of caveats here. One is, like I said, if that's your industry standard. But two, there are ways to get scholarships for certain internships. Like that at Tenderfoot, we had our own intern for Tenderfoot, and although we were an early stage startup, we couldn't really pay him. He was able to get a substantial grant from his college. He applied to that grant, and we didn't accept his application until we knew that he would be able to get paid. So we wouldn't have offered to it if he wouldn't have been able to get paid for that. So it's like if you can get a grant, some universities have like grant systems in order to get paid for unpaid work. But I will say too, in that a lot of times, if you're not being paid for your internship, the odds that the quality of your internship is going to be worse is much, much higher, because they're probably not going to value you as much as if you were a paid employee or a paid intern. It's much more common that they'll take you for granted. So do kind of keep that in mind, especially if it is a bigger company, like an established company, and they're not paying you. Like that to me, that's a pretty large red flag that you might not want to take that internship. On the other side of it, if the internship is something that you like, let's say you're building in public, you're on Twitter, there is someone on Twitter that you really like you love their company, that's a startup, you love them, you want them to be your mentor, it might not be a bad idea to potentially take like an unpaid internship mentorship opportunity with them for a summer. But that's only if you know the person, you've seen them on social media, you know the company, and that's a little bit of a different situation, because the odds of that opportunity is a lot better for you personally, is a lot higher than like a bigger company that's just not offering paid work. I will say at Tenderfoot, we only accept paid internships. We will not post any unpaid internships. So definitely on the side of paying your interns.
Definitely, I think it is more of a personal choice, as you rightly mentioned, because Paul makes an interesting note here as well. So if you can springboard, into a career role, which will probably, you know, it will help you overtake your competition. Yes, by all means, go for that unpaid internship. Uh, and at the same time, it's be not paying your intern shouldn't be an excuse as well. So if it is a very big corporation and they're not paying up, I think it's safe to assume that they're not very much interested in having an intern as compared to a startup where they might have a very narrow budget, but still are willing to pay you or compensate you to a certain extent. So again, it all depends on your personal choices, the industry you're in, the country, and also your career goals. So this is probably the right point to bring in the importance of setting the right intentions and setting the goals, because you would want whatever you do complement your goals and help you align with that, rather than take you or probably divert you to somewhere else. So again, it's more of a personal convenience. So if you're really well supported and you feel that there is an opportunity for you to do it unpaid for the experience, by all means do it. If you feel that you have to be paid, even that is a valid standpoint. And as Aprilynne rightly pointed out, Tenderfoot really strives to ensure that all their internships are 100% paid. So this is again related to communication as well. So hesitant to ask questions, especially if they're entering a professional setup for the very first time. So what would be some tips to help the interns, develop this skill of asking the right questions at the right time?
Yeah, I'll answer this question through the lens of being a trainer. So actually, towards the end of my experience at the startup, I was training 4 different people to come into the company and kind of do the work that I was doing. And you definitely do need to ask questions. If you aren't asking any questions when you're being trained or being taught something new, it's an indicator to your trainer that either a you're like exceptional and this work that you're being given is way too easy for you, which in that case is probably not a good fit to be doing that work in the first place if you have no questions about it, or two, you're just kind of lost and you don't understand enough in order to be able to ask questions. So definitely ask questions because that gives your the trainer a cue of how much you understand and how much you don't understand, which is really important for them to be able to train you properly and for you to be able to get like a good fit and a good orientation into your role. In terms of the questions that you ask, one thing that I got really good at, so in the beginning of my internship, I either didn't ask any questions because I honestly didn't understand enough to be able to ask the questions. And I was like very overwhelmed with everything that I was being hit with, or I asked pretty obvious questions. And later on, what I did is like I made sure to try to any question that I had, I tried to answer that question for myself first. And it was only after I exhausted like all other potential resources and other options that I had did I eventually go to someone and ask them a question. And this did take like in the beginning it took a long time to get the answers to my questions, so I would just be like scrolling through our Slack channels or like digging through our website and trying to find out the answer for myself. Kind of through that process I really showed my managers that like if I'm asking a question, it's going to be a good question. And then they're much more likely to want to answer all of my questions because they know that it's a good question. And I try to not repeat questions if I can help it. Again, try to like go back, see what they answer. Take good notes if you're asking questions orally and they respond orally, because if you have the question again, you want to be able to refer to your notes. But yeah, biggest advice for asking questions is do everything you can to find the answer yourself first. Even if it's like Google, even if it's like a YouTube video, something completely separate from the actual company. Of course, in company related instances, it's a lot tougher, but look through the company manuals, look through the training documents, look through any like internal documents that you have before asking your question.
Absolutely. So I think I have two tips, which is probably an extension to what you just mentioned. So first step is to just put in the efforts, try and search Google, because nowadays probably every book on the planet is available on Google, and students do get access through their university. So that might be a good place to start. So two other skills that has really helped me when I started out professionally was the skill of reframing. So whatever was the doubt you had, you would just reframe that, and in the end, ask if you've got it right or if you've understood it right. And most of the managers that I've worked with have really appreciated, because one, I just display what is my level of understanding, and as an intern, it's not a big of an expectation on you to understand each and every word that is being said. So there will always be instances where you might not even get a word right. So reframing kind of showed my level of understanding and get the opinion without me explicitly asking for it. And second is clarification. So you can always clarify with your manager about what if is X means X or is X meaning Y, and in what context and what is the terms related to it. So if you can just ask for a clarification, I think your manager or your mentor would be more than willing to give you the required clarification. Or if not, if there shortage of time, they can probably guide you towards the right resource, because even in the end that is again a win. So if you're saving time on browsing through, say, a catalog of 1,000 resources and narrow it down to 100, it's still a win. So I think these two skills probably just help me circumvent this hesitancy, or for that matter to even reach out to my manager. So three steps, simple, easy to follow. So thank you for sharing, Aprilynne. So we come towards competition, because digital age, people have access to resources worldwide. And if you're applying for a company like LinkedIn for internship, so competition is definitely going to be high, and some of them feel intimidated. So what do you think they should do in these situations?
Yeah, I'll say I've I've definitely been in situations where your co-interns are pretty competitive. The best example I can give of this, at least from what I can garner, is let's say like you're all in an internship program and there are 10 of you and you know that only 3 people can get a return offer after the internship. It's going to be a pretty competitive environment among co-interns because you know that like only 3 of you are going to get the full-time offers. And that can get really tricky because the culture can turn pretty downward pretty quickly in terms of like you asking your intern a question and they're not going to answer you because they don't want to like help you because everyone's kind of pitted against each other. That can get rough. um, in terms of solutions, it's I would say trying to befriend at least one other intern that you can at least like form like a little like truce or alliance with if you're in like a highly cutthroat environment can be kind of crucial in order to kind of staying afloat when everyone else is at each other. Like see if you can like invite someone out for like drinks or for a coffee sometime, like see what sort of actual out of work relationships you can get with some of your co-interns to make your in work relationships with them a little bit better. Other than that, the only thing I could say, if your other co-interns are being super competitive and not really giving you a lot of support, then look to your external community for support or a community within the company. So either look to your manager for support, look for other people like other groups of interns or other people in the company outside of your group of interns for support, form relationships with them, or again go to your external community, go to Twitter, go to whatever you have outside of that, and ask for support that way, ask questions that way, do leverage all of the unique advantages that you have in terms of community outside of the little core group of interns that they're there. That's maybe how you can get through it alive.
Mhm. Absolutely. So the way I see it is the fact that you have been accepted into the internship program should, again, in the first step, speak a lot about your capabilities. So you can definitely leverage that particular strength. And second, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to showcase your leadership skills, your community building. So again, the audience might be able to appreciate how we are circling back towards these two fundamental concepts: one, building community to help you make progress, and second is communication. Because if you're in the first place hot-headed, or if you're kind of rude to your co-interns, obviously they wouldn't be inclined to help you at all. So understanding your strengths, trying to see how you can complement the weakness of your co-interns is something which you can definitely leverage from day one. And again, building community, as you rightly pointed out, looking out for people on Twitter, LinkedIn, or even Facebook, if that is where your target audience or your target group is most likely to be found. Go ahead, reach out, understand how to write an effective email or a DM, ask for a conversation, because most of them are probably willing to get on a call, just like we did initially a couple of months ago. So all it takes is to start that conversation, explain what you want to get out of it, and be willing to give as well. So 3 steps once again, which will really help you to not feel intimidated and showcase your strengths. So, which brings us to the last pain point, which is feeling overwhelmed. Because again, you can understand when you're entering the professional setup for the very first time, that trust, that expectation can just help you, can make you feel overwhelmed because you're not familiar with the surroundings and you don't know how to handle the situation. So, what did what steps did you take to ensure that you didn't feel overwhelmed, and probably circle back to the previous question of achieving balance between your personal life and your internship?
Yeah, I'll say again, I'll say lean into it and then give a little personal anecdote. So I mentioned my manager at the startup quit a couple weeks into my internship there, and she didn't tell me. I was out. I got a call from our CEO. He told me that she had left the company, that I had to take over the majority of her responsibilities. And like I went through all the stages of grief that day. Like I was like shocked. I was in denial for a while. I was angry at her for leaving, and I was terrified that I would fail because I would have a lot of these new responsibilities. I was already working pretty hard at that point. I was already working like 50-hour weeks. And so at that point, I'm like, with everything else, I'm going to fail. Then the company is going to fail. And then all of my friends who work at this company are going to be jobless because of me and my inability to do everything. That being said, I didn't really have much of an option. So I came into work early the next day. And I will say that that experience broke me, but in a good way. It broke down all of the ideas that I had in my head of like what I was capable of and reformed them into like a completely new idea of what I was capable of. And because of that, I was able to come back to school that next semester way ahead of my peers because I had been put into a very, very, very overwhelming position and able to get through it. So I will say if you're feeling overwhelmed by work, on one hand, like lean into it. You can probably learn a lot. You're probably capable of a lot more than you think you are. Like I already had a pretty good idea. I was like, oh yeah, I can do a lot. But even after that, I was reinvented, and so being overwhelmed is a possibility for being reinvented. That being said, if you feel like death, like if you're being overworked so much, if you're so overwhelmed that you just can't handle it anymore, ask for help and feel comfortable doing so. Ask for help from your superiors, ask for help from your co-interns, ask for help from your community on the outside as well. It is okay to ask for help if you're feeling like it's too much. It's okay to set boundaries for yourself as well. I didn't have any boundaries when I was working. I worked all the time. Um, but there was this is probably not a good example. I'm probably setting a very bad example, but there, out of the entire summer there, I got one day off, and on that one day, I asked like, "Hey, no, no, I'm going to be offline for this day. Like, I'm not going to be able to respond to Slack messages. I'm not going to be able to take calls. I'm not doing anything for this one day." And that was enough, at least for me, to kind of get over the burnout that I was feeling, feel energized. Everyone has different levels of what they can and cannot handle. And so when you are feeling overwhelmed to like the point of break, set boundaries for yourself. Like it's okay to do so and be confident in those. No one's going to ask you to like work yourself to death. And if they are, they're not worth it. Like your own health is way more important than any one particular job opportunity. So really prioritize yourself. Do what you can, lean into the work, but if it's too much, step back and that's okay.
Absolutely, and I would definitely want to reiterate this particular fact. Your mental health always comes first, irrespective of what stage of life you're in. So, if you start respecting your mental health early, it just shows up in the future as well. And some great points again, April. And so, one is definitely communicating with people around you, with your managers, or with whoever is involved with your internship. So communication plays a key role. Second is to prioritize your tasks. So I think this is one of the most fundamental things you can do to prioritize what needs to be done and what isn't. And third is to set a complete day to take a break from your internship because however fast the world might go, people will definitely understand if they are the right people that you need a break, and taking a day off is something which you can do to at least respect yourself. If not for anything else, just do it for your own self-care. So amazing points, and I just didn't realize we have been taking this conversation for almost an hour now, and I think we have really focused on the particular topic and shown it how it really doesn't matter on which team or which pain point you're focusing, building a community, communication, and leveraging it for here in our case it's internship. Perhaps you can probably replace it with any other thing that you might be currently looking to go at, and it will still be the same. So I can say confidently that building a community is kind of a fundamental building block. Your final thoughts, April?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, building a community is absolutely huge. I will say my Twitter community that I have right now is like my most impactful business asset that I have, period. I would not be where I am today if not for Twitter. And so like if you take anything from this conversation, like put yourself out there, start building in public, go onto Twitter, go onto YouTube, go onto something where you can put yourself out there and again, start forming a community around you. It will be worth it. Absolutely.
I cannot agree more. So I've just linked Aprilynne's Twitter account on my social media post. So give her a follow. Reach out to her if you're a student looking out for internship. I think she will do her best to connect you with some probable prospective companies. And yeah, do look out at her Twitter account. She does shares a lot of tips around community building, audience building, and she's a great artist as well. So if you have any requirements for banner, she's the person to look at. April, thank you so much for offering 1 hour of your morning time. It's night here, but for you, it's the morning, the day is still about to start. So I really appreciate you taking the time and getting on a conversation with me. I'm sure the audience would have gotten amazing insights which they can build upon in the coming days. And yeah, hope to see you soon on another episode if at all an opportunity arises. Otherwise, take care and stay well. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. This is absolutely incredible. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.